right, it's the first Tuesday of December back home here in San Francisco following a nice trip to the Empire State. Have been home for a couple weeks now. It looks like some of that cold and wet weather were brought back as well. Currently at the Stonestown Galleria Mall. It's a pretty popular mall and it's that time of year to be at these types of locations. But yeah, since coming back, I have put in a mix of poker playing in the form of tournaments and cash games. Lucky Chances has the annual Gold Rush series, so I hopped into the first of the 3 events there, fired 2 bullets, and unfortunately couldn't go deep in either bullet. Lost with aces versus queens in one of the hands, and the other one was ace-jack versus ace-10. So a couple of rough beats to get knocked out of that event twice. Played the main event, the 1K main event, and in a blind versus blind situation, I lost with king-queen versus ace-9 for about 15 big blinds. So a bit unfortunate there to get knocked out as well. I did play 1 cash game session at Lucky Chances. It was pretty uneventful, and over a span of like a 6-hour session, just kind of got grinded down and lost a little bit there. But yeah, put in a notable session at Casino M8trix the weekend before Thanksgiving. Recording the hands now, wanted to do it a little bit sooner, but got preoccupied with family and friend activities, as I'm sure you can all relate to during this time of year. And yeah, there are a lot of interesting spots and a pretty roller coaster session played at Casino M8trix. So unlike the previous video in New York where there was a lot of scenery and a lot of awesome moments captured, this video is going to be mostly just hand recaps. In this first hand of playing 2-3-5 in for $600, you know, sometimes when you take too long of a break from this sort of thing, you get a bit rusty, you fumble your words, so let's try this again. In the first interesting hand to note, I've got pocket deuces in the small blind in a 4-way limped pot. We go multi-way to a flop of ace-jack deuce rainbow, so flop bottom set. Checks over to the late position player. He puts out a bet of $15 and only I make the call. The turn comes a 9 of diamonds, putting a backdoor flusher on the board. I check it, he puts out a bet of $35, and I think both options are on the table. Can certainly raise or call here. Raising makes sense because the board has gotten a little bit more dynamic with some draws coming in on the turn, with some straight draws and flush draws. And I think the merits for calling are that it keeps the opponent's range pretty wide here. And that's actually what I decided to do. A number of factors went into this decision making at the time. For starters, it was a limped pot, so I think he's pretty capped at 1 pair type holdings. A hand like ace-x makes a lot of sense, maybe a hand like ace-10, ace-8. And so I didn't want to raise and push him off those hands. Another consideration by just calling is that it makes it continue to look like I've just got a weak ace here, willing to call some bets down. I think it's good to kind of balance some of these spots with some strong holdings like the set here by just calling. I don't recall any history with this player, but based on the mannerisms that I picked up during the early portion of this session, he seemed to be a good thinking player. He was a bit on the younger side, Asian player as well. And he just seemed to have a pretty aggressive style based on his mannerisms. So I think on the river, I expect him to fire bets out pretty often, whether it's for thin value or strong value with a hand like 2 pair. And also maybe betting on occasion with his bluffs, hands that miss with like king-queen, queen-10, hands like that. So all those details factored into the decision to take a little bit of a mixed strategy here and just call the bet. And we go to a river of an offsuit 4. I check with the hope of him firing out a bet, and he decides to check it back. So table my hand, it is good here. So yeah, definitely consider taking a lead on the river there. But usually a call bet line indicates some pretty strong type holdings. So in an effort to try to stay somewhat balanced and a little bit unpredictable towards the beginning stages of this session, took that check line. Didn't work out in terms of getting additional value, but was happy to take it down and a good start to the session. This next hand is fairly straightforward, but it does set the mood for the next few hours. So including it for that reason, I'm in the cutoff with 8-9 of hearts and I raise it to $20. Both of the blinds defend. 3 ways to a flop of 6-6-7 rainbow. So flop the open-ended straight draw here. It checks to me and I decided to check it back and certainly bet here, but both pairs were pretty shallow and I wanted to just try to make my hand in this spot. And so the turn comes a 9, small blind jams for $40, big blind folds, I make the easy call. The river comes the queen of diamonds, we table our hands and he shows 5-8 of clubs for the turn straight. So lose this one here, double this player up, and I just don't do too well against the 5-8 suited hands if you've caught some of the previous vlogs, particularly at Casino M8trix. All right, this next hand is pretty interesting. I'm in early position with 4-5 of diamonds and I raise it to $20. I get 4 callers. We go multi-way to a flop of 8-5 deuce with 2 spades and 1 diamond. So I flop middle pair here with backdoor diamonds. Small blind leads in for $35. Pretty interesting spot for me here, given that I'm the initial raiser in this hand. I can definitely have all of the overpairs here, so I've got a range advantage in this spot relative to the field. I don't want to just call and invite some other players in with some weak flush draws, maybe some 8s and some other stronger 5s maybe. So I decided to take a pretty unique line, and I raise it to $105 with the intention to try to get everyone to fold and then put small blind in a pretty tough spot with a pair of 8s in his hand. And all the players do fold, getting back over to the small blind. And after he tanks for a while, he makes the call. So I think he's pretty capped here with a hand like maybe 6-7 and occasionally an 8. He also has some flush draws here, maybe some combo draws, but nevertheless, I think I can try to get him off on future streets. The turn comes a 9 of diamonds, and this time he leads again. He puts out a bet of $100. I pick up the backdoor flush draw here, so with $400 in my stack, I think it's just a standard call here to try to hit my hand and get stacks in on the river. So I just make the call, and the river comes a king of hearts. He looks at my stack up and down for a little bit, takes a pretty long glare, and jams me for the $300, and just gotta let it go. If I had to guess, it feels exactly like a hand like 6-7, making the straight on the turn for him. I guess you can have missed spades here, but he didn't seem like the type of player that would just kind of make that play. At least that was my assumption. This next hand involves the same player from the previous hand. This time he's in under the gun. He raises it to $15. He's been kind of playing a pretty mixed strategy up to this point, so I don't think he's particularly strong from this position, even though typically people should be fairly strong from under the gun. And when it gets to me in middle position with ace-jack offsuit, I try to isolate this player, and I put in a 3-bet to $55. The player in the low jack jams for $185. Everyone folds and it gets back to me. Another $130 to call here, so I think about 2-1 or so. I decided to just call it off, and we go to a run out of jack 4 deuce with 2 spades. Comes another deuce on the turn, and the river comes a 5 of spades. I table my hand, and he shows ace king of spades for the river flush. So I suck out on him on the flop, and then he re-sucks out on the river. So following these 3 hands was admittedly pretty frustrated with how the session was going. And that's when this next hand happens. Under the gun 1 raises to $20. I call in middle position with 8-10 of diamonds, and we get 2 additional callers. 4 ways to a flop of king high, king 7 deuce with 2 diamonds. Initial raiser bets $35. I'm ready to gamble it up at this point, and I raise it to 105. The other players fold, gets back to this player, he jams for 260 total. I make the quick call. He quickly turns over pocket kings for top set, and the board runs out a deuce and an 8, no diamonds. So brick out and double up another player. So yeah, following that hand was stuck in the neighborhood of $900 to $1,000 after some play bad and some run bad, and just had to take a moment in between the ears to kind of just take a deep breath and realize that it's just kind of a few hours of some unfortunate things happening, but it wasn't that I couldn't turn it around. So just kind of had to regroup mentally. Following a bit of a mental refresh there, the next notable hand comes when middle position raises to $20, the button calls, and I call in the big blind with pocket 6s. 3 raise to a flop of 5-3 deuce rainbow, so flop an overpair to this board. Checks over to the button, he's got about $300, and he puts out a bet of $55. He's been a pretty splashy player up to this point, getting money in there with a variety of different hands, so I think my pocket 6s fares to be the best hand a good amount of the time against this player. And given that middle position didn't continuation bet, I don't think she's that strong here. So I put in a raise to $125. Middle position folds, button jams pretty quickly, all in for the $300 total. I make the quick call, and the board runs out a 7 and a queen. We table our hands. He shows 8 deuce offsuit for bottom pair. So the pocket 6s here holds, and I scoop this pot. This next hand is a straddle pot. I'm in middle position with the speed limit hand. I raise it to $35. Low jack makes the call, and straddler makes the call. 3 ways to a flop of queen 6-5 monotone all spades. Flop bottom set on this board. Checks to me, a good spot to c-bet and try to go for some value against some spades, some pairs here. So I bet $55, and only the straddler makes the call. Turn comes a 7 of spades, putting the front door flush out there. He checks it, I decide to check it back. and the river comes an offsuit 9. He leads for $80, and just got to let it go with spades out there as well as a one-liner to the straight. So lose this one. All right, so win one, lose one on the felt, and just won one and lost one on the basketball court. Got to wait a couple games before hopping back out there. So just a few more hands to run through. Following the pocket fives hand, there was one really notable and interesting hand that really changed the momentum of the session. But I'm actually going to save it till the end to run through that hand just because it was a very interesting hand. All right, so the first interesting hand following the pivotal hand, it's a straddle pot. I'm in early position with pocket sevens and I raise it to $35. You have 4 callers. The flop comes queen 7-6 with 2 diamonds. So flop middle set. Checks to me. I see bet $100, a little bit more than half pot, and only the small blind makes the call. The turn comes an offsuit deuce. So perfect card here. He checks it. He's only got 250 back, and so I jam it all in, and he makes a pretty quick fold. This next hand, there are 2 limps. I'm on the button with ace 10 of hearts. I raise it to $30. The small blind calls, and one of the limpers calls as well. The flop comes ace queen deuce rainbow. Small blind leads for $35. The limper folds, and I decide to make the call with top pair and backdoor hearts here. Small blind's one of the tightest players on the table. The turn comes a king of clubs, so I pick up the gut shot straight draw. He bets $50 and he only has $70 back, and he definitely just jam it here, but as mentioned, he is the tightest player, so can be behind sometimes, but not ready to fold just yet. And I make the call, and the river comes another king. He jams for $70, and now it's a pretty easy call because if he did have a hand like ace queen, he gets counterfeited, so just quickly stick the money in there. And he's reluctant to show, and after pausing for a few seconds, he actually mucks his hand. So really interestingly played hand on his part. Not exactly sure what he could have there to just fire on 3 streets when there were really no draws on the flop, I guess with the exception of a hand like Jack 10 maybe, but Jack 10 gets there. So not really sure what he had, but happy to take this one down. All right, this next hand, it's 7-handed. There's an early position limper. I'm in middle position with Beauty and the Beast offsuit. I raise it to $25. Cut off and button call. So multi-way again to a flop of king 9-3 with 2 diamonds. I decided to check it this time, mixing it up a little bit. Despite there being a flush draw, I'm okay kind of with checking it here for just a little bit of deception, and both players check back. Turn brings another king, so I'm out now. I make trip kings, and I decided to fire out this time, $35. Cutoff folds, button calls. The river comes a 6 of clubs, and it brings the backdoor flush draw in. He can on occasion hit backdoor clubs, but I don't want to just check it and run the risk of missing out on value with trips here. So I settled on a bet of $50, hoping to target a hand with a 9.
What's up? What's up?
Hoping to target a hand with a 9 in it. And it's the same size bet or similar size bet that I would go if I had a hand like pocket aces, queens or jacks. So a little bit of balance there as well. So fire out $50. He doesn't think too long, makes the call. I table my hand and it's good. One of the small disadvantages of using a small DJI Osmo pocket camera is that you don't always get to see who's behind you. But shout out to my boy Ed, one of the best basketball players that I play with on the regular. Really nice dude. And he's probably the cleanest, dirtiest player that I know, which means that he fouls a lot, but he doesn't hurt anybody. Our last interesting hand to note, and this is the hand that took place before the previous 3 that I just went through. It's a straddle pot. Under the gun raises to $25. I'm in middle position with ace queen offsuit, and I 3-bet it to $80, and only he makes the call. Heads up to a flop of 6-5 deuce with 2 hearts. He checks it. I down C-bet it for $60. I've got the ace of hearts in my hand, so I've got the nut blocker, and I can continue repping over pairs on this board. He makes the call. The turn comes a 3 of hearts, so it brings in the front door flush draw. He checks it, he's got $550 back, and I decide to bet $120. He thinks it through for a little bit, and he puts in a min raise to $250. Really interesting spot. Can't ever really fold, but not exactly sure what he has. I don't think he has too many straights in this spot. That said, I'm kind of prepared to just evaluate rivers, and I make the call. River comes an ace of spades, and he's in the tank for quite a while and ultimately settles on a check. I do make top pair here, and I'm not sure that I can get value from a weaker hand at this point. I think all other pairs fold, and if I bet, I just think he's gonna fold those hands and snap me with hands like sets or the occasional straight. So I check it back, and he turns over pocket 8s. Really interesting hand. A little bit curious to see what all of you would have done on the turn and the river. Would you have just jammed after he re-raises on the turn? And would you have gone for thin value when he checks on the river? So really interesting spot, a couple spots here in this hand. All right, so that's gonna wrap it up for the session played at Casino M8trix. Was in the game for $1,500, stuck 1,000 at one point, battled all the way back to cash out $2,335. So booking a nice win of $835 to make up for some of the failed tournament attempts. And yeah, that's gonna wrap it up for this one. Cash game grind in December, and I will see you all on the next one.